I was in Ghana in 1997 when my mother broke what was almost a 30-year silence and told me the story of the night the tanks came, which is the February 66 coup.
Right.
I had lived with nightmares for almost 20 years, and I learned that the nightmares that I was experiencing was the same set of events that my mother described when she broke her silence.
Yeah.
So what I connected was the things that made me feel damaged had a context, had a reason, had a reality that I didn't know and I didn't understand. So my mother breaking her silence was just a game changer, it was a world changer for me. When I go to Philadelphia from Ghana, and I meet Winnie Mandela. She's the keynote speaker at the Million Woman March, which is why I'm there. And I tell her this story. And she says to me, when you go to South Africa, center your mother's broken silence. That was a second game changer because I felt what she was saying to me is that there are many ways that people reveal the truth of their experiences. And one of those ways of revelation is not what they share, it's what they don't share. And that means you got to ask different kinds of questions. And it means you got to pay a different kind of attention. And who you pay attention to has to change. And it was just mind-blowing to me because I had my little list, I had my list of people that I was going to speak with and interview. And I still then had my understanding of journalism was very connected to strong, sharp, questions and pay attention to what the answer is and what people are saying. And that was a complete 180 for me. Because what it taught me was that, no, it's not about the question that you ask and the way the person answers. What happens between after you finish asking the question and before they start speaking. And that's where you have to pay attention. And so this centering of my mother's broken silence was just a complete game changer for me and totally transformed how I then both practiced journalism for the rest of the time that I was a journalist, but then went into South Africa. And what Winnie Mandela said is, I know you have that. I had a list of men that I was speaking to, and she would look down at the list and looked at me and smiled and said, no women. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about it. That's how ingrained patriarchy is in all of us. I didn't even think about it. And she said, I need you to speak to the men. That's very important. But first, I need you to listen to the women. She didn't say speak to the women. I need you to listen to them. And because I had now connected silence with revelation, how I was going to listen was very different. Part of our healing, what does it mean to have a return to yourself? And so the emotional economy in your own life manifests in all kinds of ways. We're sitting here in Ghana. The emotional economy of Blackness means that instead of Cadbury's being the chocolate giant, or Belgium or Switzerland being the chocolate capitals, Ghana is, Cote d'Ivoire is. Why? Because we produce the cocoa. But our relationship to something that comes from outside of ourselves still tells us that that's better. And so this emotional economy that is an inheritance, where we've been taught about who we are as Black people and how we are shaped by whiteness, and how the more we aspire to centering whiteness, the more successful we'll be. That teaching manifests in our economies on the continent. Our emotional economy is connected to our fiscal economy. And part of what emotional justice is saying is that we cannot underestimate the power of the connection and the emotional labor we all put into in either fighting against whiteness or negotiating with it in order to get to what we think is success. There's no magical pill. You've got to take the steps and do what I call, we've all got our emotional work to do. The question is, what is yours? What is your work, Nana, as a Black woman, versus the work of a white woman, versus the work of a white man, versus the work of a Black man? Emotional justice is a racial healing roadmap.
Got it.
It wrestles with this legacy of untreated trauma,
Right.
that has shaped all of us because of the world's that have shaped us and the systems in those worlds. So whether that's colonialism on the continent, enslavement, apartheid, we are all shaped by them.
Yeah.
And because we are, it develops a sense of ourselves and with each other. And when it comes to the world of emotions, we've both gendered it and then disregarded it. Mm-hmm. We make emotions untrustworthy. We gender them. We say, well, after this woman, she's being emotional.
Yeah.
As if that is somehow not a human quality, but is instead something problematic that means you shouldn't be paid attention to. And we have divorced the world of the emotional when it comes to our justice movement, social justice, environmental justice, labor justice, gender justice. Even though emotions are such a massive part of how we get here. So what does that mean? It means that there is a dehumanization, particularly for global Black people, when it comes to the fight and the search for justice. We think it's just about the politics, the legislation, the policy, the environment, the labor, the gender. Emotional justice is saying all of those things matter, but the pivotal missing piece is the emotional justice in every single one of them. That we have a generational inheritance that is this untreated trauma, that is the result of these harmful systems that have shaped all of us. The question is, we ask both individually and then connected institutionally, how did these oppressive systems show up and how we engage with each other and how we engage ourselves? And specifically, I talk about the language of whiteness.
Yeah.
The language of whiteness being this narrative that has shaped all of us about how the world came to be, about how Ghana comes to be and the continent comes to be, that teaches all of us that whiteness is the world, saves the world, built the world, rules the world, teaches all of us that white people are the leaders. Anybody who is not white is a learner. So the West is the leader and Africa is the learner. Africa is the problem and the West has the solution. And that teaching, whilst we now intellectually understand is a crock of we all know what, has emotionally shaped an identity to the continent that is rooted in inferiority.